Today we look at flat rate loans using the simple interest formula. In the first formula we notice an uppercase R. This means that the interest rate, for example if we've used 5%, has already been divided by 100 and we therefore use the decimal of 0.05 in that formula. In the second formula we notice we've used a lowercase r. That means the interest rate has not been divided by 100 yet. And we'll just use 5%, therefore we still have the divided by 100 in the formula itself. We always have to make very sure that the interest rate and the number of time periods make use of the same unit of time. If the interest rate used is per annum, the time periods have to be in years. If the interest rate used is, for example, per day, then the time periods have to be in days. So always double check that those two are in the same units of time. If they ask us the total amount owed over the time period, we then have to take the principal plus the simple interest as we have just calculated to get that total. Let's look at example 1. John borrows $8,000. That's the principal. At 5% per annum. That's the interest rate. I'm going to use the formula with the uppercase R. Therefore, I have to divide the 5 by 100 first. So I will use 0.05 in the formula. Over 7 years. My number of time periods is 7. I do check that the number of time periods is given in years and the interest rate is per annum, so that also refers to years, so I'm happy with that. Question A. Calculate the total amount of simple interest. I write down the formula for simple interest first. I equals P times R times N. Now I substitute the values I have highlighted. The principal is $8,000. The interest as a decimal, already divided by 100, is 0.05. And the number of time periods is 7. I multiply that using my calculator. I make sure I always give a unit in my final answer. And the total interest earned over the 7 years is $2,800. Question B asks calculate the total amount to be repaid. The total amount to be repaid will be the principal I borrowed in the beginning plus the interest that I had to pay over the 7 years and have calculated in question A. I now just add those two amounts, 8,000 plus 2,800, and the total amount I will have to repay for borrowing this money is $10,800. Example 2. You invest $4,000, that's the principal, at 0.025% per day. So if I use the lowercase r, which means I'll have a divide by 100 in my formula, I can use the 0.025 just the way it is. If I already want to divide by 100 now, I can use uppercase R and I'll have 0.00025. And that's per day. for 2 weeks. So if I look at my number of time periods, that also needs to be in days because my interest rate refers to per day. So 2 weeks is 2 times 7 days is 14 days. Question A asks, calculate the total amount of simple interest you would earn. Once again, I always write down the formula first. P times R times N. The principal is 4,000. The interest rate as a decimal already divided by 100. And the number of days is 14. Using my calculator, I calculate that. I always have a unit in my answer, and the amount of simple interest earned is $14. Let's look at example 3. Let's look at example 3. Andrew borrowed $6,000, that's the principal, at 12% per annum. Interest rate is therefore 12, or if we want to use uppercase R, we will have to divide it by 100 first and use 0.12. The number of time periods refers to 7 months. So this is a discrepancy. Interest rate is per year and number of time periods is in months. So we first have to convert this to be as a fraction of a year. So that's going to be 7 over 12. Now we have summarized the information that's given to us and we check what we have to answer. Calculate the amount of simple interest. I write down the formula. I equals P times R times N. The principal is 6,000 times the interest rate times 7 over 12. I calculate that and Andrew will need to pay $420 interest for borrowing that money for 7 months. Example 4. Calculate the term of the loan if 2,700 simple interest. So now they give me the amount of simple interest. It's paid on a loan of $5,000. That's the principal. At 6% per annum. So the interest rate as a decimal is 6 divided by 100, 0.06. I write down the formula for simple interest again, and I substitute the values that they have given me. The amount of simple interest is 2,700. The principal is 5,000. The interest rate is 6% per annum. And I don't know N because that is the term of the loan refers to the number of time periods. I now have a straightforward linear equation. I first simplify what I can, which means I multiply what I can multiply. 5,000 times 0.06 is equal to 300. 300n equals 2,700. To get the n on its own, I divide on both sides by 300. Simplify that, and n equals 2,700 divided by 300 is 9. I know that I always have to give a unit in my answer. The interest rate was per annum. Therefore, my time periods also need to be in years, so my answer is 9 years. Last example. Example 5. Andrew paid $1,300 simple interest. So they give us the amount of interest on a loan of $6,500. That's the principal over 4 years. So the number of time periods, 4 years. They ask us what was the interest rate. Interest rate means the answer needs to be given as a percentage. So for this one, it might be better for us to start with the formula of I equals P RN everything divided by 100. Then we don't have to remember to multiply the answer by 100 to get it into a percentage at the end. The amount of interest is 1,300. Principal is 6,500. We don't know the interest rate, so we just keep the pronumeral there. And the number of time periods is 4 years. All of that divided by 100. I first simplify, so I multiply what I can. 6,500 times 4 divided by 100 is equal to 260 times R. Now to get the R on its own, I divide by 260 on both sides. And that gives me an interest rate of 5%. The number of time periods was in years, so my interest rate will also be per year, so it's 5% per annum.